Breaking this one down, Joe Musso alongside Ryan Wilson, Bryant McFadden here as well, fellas. Plenty to get to, and we always start with the winner. Was not a pretty first half by these Philadelphia Eagles, but they rally in the second half in the rain at Arrowhead. A statement win and one that keeps them at the top of their conference. But how were they able to effort that win in the second half, Ryan?
Bowed their neck, to borrow a coaching term, and they're able to run more plays offensively. We were concerned about that. 18 plays in the first half, had 54 total by the time it was all said and done. We're able to lean on the running game. DeAndre Swift, they got him involved, continue to get him involved. He had 47 rush yards in the first half, finished with 76. They leaned on the screen game. It looked like Jalen Hurts wasn't 100% B-Mac, but that he was still able to win with the tush push, which is his go-to move, even when he's not healthy. And then the defense was opportunistic. And on the other side, the Chiefs continue to make mistakes to shoot themselves in the foot. They, for some reason, struggle to score points in the second half. That continued to play itself out, but I give the Eagles a ton of credit for going on the road in tough conditions and winning a game at the end of the day. And we heard this throughout the broadcast. That may not mean anything in the standings because this is a game in the other conference in terms of the matchup there. But it's a huge win for your boost yourself mentally in terms of getting over the hump, beating a team that got you in the Super Bowl back in February, and then going on from here with the understanding that you're now still a one-loss team, but you're at 9-1 as we head down the stretch here.
Yeah, this game was basically, Ryan, the tale of two halves. The first half was totally dominated by the Chiefs. They went into halftime. I think the score was 17-7. As you mentioned, Philly couldn't do anything right, especially on the offensive side. They couldn't protect Jalen Hurts. He was sacked, I think, in 2 quarters. They had 5 sacks on him, if I'm not mistaken. But then in the second half, they just stayed the course. They were extremely patient. And the miscues by Kansas City, untimely miscues, led to multiple opportunities for the Eagles to cash in, and they cashed in big time. Anytime you're in the red zone, Ryan, Joe, and you don't score, that's a letdown. But anytime you're in the red zone and you provide turnovers, that's losing football. And 2 opportunities for the Chiefs in the red zone. You see the interception there by Kevin Byard, and then, of course, the fumble by Travis Kelce. Those were missed points, and that gave the Eagles life. And when you're given a team like the Eagles, when you talk about the talent, they have extra opportunities to be able to prevail. They will do so.
And you don't have to be in the red zone to leave points on the field. We're talking about that MVS play, final drive for the Chiefs. And we'll get to some of those second half struggles on a larger scale in a moment, but we do have to talk about this play because we're having a different conversation right now if MVS hauls that ball in more likely than not. A league-high 26 drops for this receiving core and these tailbacks for the Kansas City Chiefs. I offer all of this because it's plain to see. What plagues this team magnified in this moment. They don't have the guy down the field right now. B-Mac, as currently constructed, the defense is balling out, doing what's asked of them, and then some. Can you win with this offense? It seems like an odd question to ask of a reigning Super Bowl champion and Patrick Mahomes. But with this crew of weapons, can they win the big one?
No, sir. No, sir, Joe, we had a quality, candid conversation about the offensive struggles for the Chiefs in regards to points scored compared to what we've seen in years past, and also in regards to Pat Mahomes and his production, right? And we talked about the difference from what we're seeing this season compared to years past was the lack of star power at the wide receiver position. For such a long time, they had Tyreek Hill, right, along with Travis Kelce. You lost Tyreek Hill last year. The offense looked better, but you still had an experienced guy in Juju Smith-Schuster. And say whatever you want to say about Juju Smith-Schuster right now, last year Juju Smith-Schuster would be a much better option than any wide receiver they currently have right now to lean on. They're trying to put together a patchwork of quality wide receiver production with guys that most people probably would consider would be 2s and 3s. So when you factor in that concern and then you're playing against a team like the Eagles, as I stated earlier in our show, during the pregame show, you can get through teams that are not playoff caliber teams, right? You can go ahead and find a way to be productive against teams that don't have championships aspirations. But when you're playing against good on good, these guys got to show up. And oftentimes when you see personnel like the Chiefs have at the wide receiver position, when the lights get bright, they don't shine. And are we surprised to see the drops that we witnessed tonight, Joe? Like, are we surprised?
I'm surprised because I expect wide receivers to make plays. I don't care about the name on the back of your jersey, but this has been who they are, to answer your question.
But Joe, you get how many drops they have on the season?
26.
20. How many?
26.
That's number one in the NFL, correct? Mm-hmm. So they have been consistently good in what? Dropping passes. So that has been their theme the entire season. So we shouldn't be surprised when we see 2 or 3 drops from their wide receiver core in a ball game is what I'm saying, and that's what happened.
Completely agree with you. The simple rule is you touch it, you catch it. If it touches you, which I think is the case in that. I mean, Patrick Mahomes could not have walked that ball any better to MVS, Ryan. When you see things like that, it has to grow concern, no?
Yeah, that was a 60-yard handoff, and it was somehow fumbled. This will make you feel better, B-Mac. MVS has dropped the ball 6 times on passes of 30-plus yards this season, so he is part of the problem, not only in this game, which we saw, but also over the course of the season. But listen, let's be honest. Travis Kelce dropped some passes. We saw Justin Watson drop a pass on a 3rd down late in the second half, and then he wasn't aware on punt team, and the ball could have been down inside the 5, and it bounced into the end zone. That led to an Eagles scoring opportunity on the next drive. So these things compound themselves and get you to where you are. Again, one of the best teams in the NFL, but you're not going to win in January and February like this. And to B-Mac's larger point, and I understand the thinking with Andy Reid in terms of, look, we can win with Patrick Mahomes and anyone else, but look on the other side. A.J. Brown has done wonders for what we see from Jalen Hurts. Steph Diggs and Josh Allen, when they're all hitting on all cylinders. Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins, when they're hitting on all cylinders. And the aforementioned Tyreek Hill, what has he done for Tua Tagovailoa's career? And that's what you have to come back to when you reevaluate this thing in the offseason. There's nothing going to happen now other than practice catching the ball with the jugs machine. But this is not sustainable if you want to play winning football going into the playoffs.
The need is clear-cut, but the roster is the roster, and we move on now to Week 12. I want to take you through this second half because this Chiefs team has not scored a second-half point in what will be a month 2 days from now. October 22nd, their last second-half points. Now, there has been a bye week. They were abroad, but the second-half issues have to be addressed here. Second half of this game for the Chiefs, punt, fumble, punt, turnover on downs. Not a winning formula by any stretch of the imagination, Ryan. I'd like to think Andy Reid is doing what he needs to do at halftime. I mean, well established is the greatness that will someday be in Canton of Andy Reid. So I don't know if this is a coaching issue, but what is the issue when it comes to the second half with the Chiefs?
So Andy Reid was 21-3 coming off a bye in the regular season before this game. Now he's 21-4, obviously, but he was only 1-1 coming off the bye when the other team was also coming off the bye. That number is now 1-2. But B-Mac, I wonder if you agree with this. I don't think this is an Andy Reid scheming issue. Andy Reid remains one of the smartest play callers in the NFL. It's an execution issue. If your dudes can't catch, they can't catch. Musso's read the stat several times now. If you drop the ball 26 times over the course of the season, you're going to struggle to win football games in the NFL where the slimmest of margins determines wins and losses. And I think at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Patrick Mahomes is still the best quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. The defense is playing out of its mind at a high level. Steve Spagnuolo has those guys balling out, even with injuries at certain positions. So it's about execution for me, B-Mac. I don't know how you feel in terms of that answer as to why this team has struggled in the second half.
Yeah, Ryan, I like that. I do agree it's about execution or the lack thereof. But then the elephant in the room for me is the personnel offensively for the wide receivers. And I think it's safe to say the Chiefs organization, they became a bit arrogant with how much they've been winning and with how good their quarterback has been. Because when you basically just put guys around your quarterback and say, we expect the same thing to happen, not in the National Football League. Let's do it like this, guys. You guys watch football, our viewers watch football just like we do. Where would you rank the Kansas City Chiefs wide receivers just in their division alone, the AFC West?
At the bottom.
Yeah, last. I think last would be the obvious, yeah.
There's no think, Joe. Dead last in the West. And if you can go ahead and just throw that out to other divisions in the National Football League, other divisions in the AFC. If you were to rank their wide receiver unit compared to some of the other teams, clearly the playoff caliber teams, look at this. The Ravens have better wide receivers than the Chiefs.
Check.
The Jaguars.
Check.
The Dolphins.
Check.
The Browns. The Texans. The Steelers, even though they don't throw the ball well,
they got receivers.
They still got receivers. The Bills, Pittman and crew with Indy, the Broncos, the Bengals. If you were to rank the Kansas City Chiefs wide receivers with these teams that we see on that graphic, the only team that you may have a debate with probably would be the Jets. But then guess what? They got Garrett Wilson.
It's a point well made and a point well taken. So maybe there is no remedy to this current ailment for the Chiefs. They'll just have to put it on Patrick Mahomes' back and say, hey, good
That's
times. Figure it out.
Hey, Joe, that's the remedy. You got to hope and pray that Pat Mahomes is playing heroic-like football week in and week out when he's playing against top-level talent like he saw tonight. It puts more pressure on Money Pat Mahomes. And I'm not saying that he can't deliver, but how sustainable is that when you're playing against these type teams that will be in January, and that's where we see Kansas City going. So it puts more pressure on Pat Mahomes.
You remember the old Andre Johnson fantasy commercial where he hits the jugs machine and he runs and then goes catches? Yeah. That's what he would have to do on that 60-yard. I mean, that was a perfect ball downfield to Marquez Valdez-Scantling. There was another team as a part of this game and a part of this conversation, and they deserve their moment in the sun here as they do avenge the Super Bowl loss here in the Eagles. And I want to take you to the quarterback who only threw 7 passes in the first half. It was a tough first half for Jalen Hurts, but this guy, you might not sit here and call him the best quarterback in the game like you did about Patrick Mahomes moments ago, but, I mean, I don't know that there's a competitor that owns the belief of his team the way that Jalen Hurts does, whether it's in the ground game, through the passing game. When rubber meets road, he seems to always show up. What did you make of his performance in this game? We're talking about 26-2, his last 28 regular season starts. This quarterback has not only emerged. At the beginning of last season, we were talking about a quarterback that still needed to prove himself.
Right.
Now we're sitting here talking about what?
In a league full of alpha competitors, I am the best at what I do. Jalen Hurts is near the top of that list, and he does it, as you see here in this graphic, with a smile on his face. But behind those eyes is a guy that wants to take your heart out and show it to you Indiana Jones style before you, meet your untimely demise, because that's how he plays this game. And it goes back to college when he was at Alabama and got benched. He didn't pout. When he got his opportunity, he took advantage of it. He took advantage of the opportunity in Oklahoma. And then when he's a second-round pick and no one was taking him seriously, B-Mac, and people were questioning why would Howie Roseman draft a quarterback when you have Carson Wentz, this is why, because he is the competitor that he is. Rick Spielman, who I do the With the First Pick podcast with, longtime Vikings general manager, said there's been no other person he has interviewed in his career in the pre-draft process that he respected more than Jalen Hurts. And I think his teammates feel the same way about him. And by the way, you can be the greatest guy in the world. If you're not producing, no one cares in the locker room. He is doing both at a high level. And B-Mac, he's doing it while banged up. He's not 100% on that knee and still finding ways to will that team to football wins.
What I learned about this team, watching them tonight, they're never out of it. And even though statistically speaking, this wasn't a great game from Jalen Hurts, but it was a great game. In the first half, he got beat up. He got sacked. As he mentioned, 7 attempts. Wasn't completing passes. Wasn't seeing the football field well. Go down to a championship-like team with 10 points on the road in 2 quarters. Kept his cool, weathered the storm, and when his arm wasn't really working, he made things happen with his legs. And their team, they didn't panic. That's the unique thing about championship caliber teams. They didn't panic. And good teams find ways to win ball games. They found a way to win ball games. And every year, when I look at some of the Super Bowl teams that are a part of, played in 3 Super Bowls, we won 2. There's always a game in the midst of the season where it's a defining moment where we kind of create that championship-like mentality, where we look ourselves in the mirror and say, you know what? We can go get it. And we believe we can go get it. And seeing what they did tonight, we all watched this in a half a play. I was like, oh, it's about to get ugly. And guess what? The adjustments the staff made along with the execution, the players were able to put forth, came out with a huge win. So this might be a game that we look back on, later down the line and say that's when this team kind of put together that nice championship dish.
There will be opportunities. Ryan, a final thought?
B-Mac, I don't want to pull this on Musso, but I know exactly when you knew that the 2005 team was going to go make a deep run. When Jerome Bettis ran over Brian Urlacher in the end zone to get that winning streak started.
Chicago, Bears, Heinz Field, snow, yes, cold. When we won that ball game, it was like whoever's in front of us, they're going down. If we happen to get in the playoffs, we won't be there short. It won't be a short lived.
And you didn't lose another game the whole season.
For a minute. Yeah. That was a game.
I'm
Good
thrilled.
memory.
I'm thrilled we could reminisce on Pittsburgh past here because the present, it's nothing to talk about.
Nothing to talk about.
It is
Stop, Joe. Don't do
always
that, Joe.
a
We just had a
pleasure
great segment.
talking with
We're
you.
not doing that, Joe.
Let's bring it back to the moment here, BMAC, and these two teams, because the road ahead for these Eagles goes Bills, Niners, Cowboys, Seahawks. They will have plenty of opportunities to create those types of moments that you two gentlemen speak of as we take a look now at the NFC playoff picture. Eagles 9-1. The road ahead, obviously, steep. Lions at 8-2 following that thrilling comeback win over, who was it again? Who was it? I think it was the Bears. 49ers 7-3, a division leader as well following their win. Wild card, well, it could be wild. Cowboys at 7-3, Seahawks and Vikings, both with 6 wins in their pocket. No team sitting on 5 wins in the NFC. All roads lead to Philadelphia, Ryan Wilson. When you take a look at this, I asked you the question before, where do you see change?
Well, I got to start at the bottom. You can't sleep on Tommy DeVito on that 3-touchdown performance. Shout out to our producer, Scott Riley. But the reality is this, right? So you have the Cowboys there. You have the Vikings there. We have to see what happens with Minnesota and Josh Dobbs. That 3-turnover performance yesterday raised a lot of questions about can they be consistent in terms of what they do. Are the Rams a team that you can count on now at 4-6? Is Matthew Stafford's health something that we can count on? Cooper Kupp's going to be out. And I think the biggest chance for change is going to be with that 4th seed in the NFC South, because you have the Saints at 5-5, then 2 teams in that division that are also 4-6, and the Falcons, who are going to go back to Des Ridder, and of course the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield. So that might be the catalyst for change in terms of what swaps from the number 4 and those teams that currently sit at 10 and 11.
Well, we're having conversations about teams in the mix, but we should be talking about the one at the top, the Birds, with a big win at Arrowhead. And there's more big wins to come, as we said, taking on the Bills, the Niners, and the Cowboys. You can catch all those highlights with us. Game Day Scoreboard every single Sunday, beginning at 4 Eastern. When they stop, we start. Highlights, reaction, and sound from the games, including a stop in the booth with some of the best in the game. Charles Davis, Tony Romo, Trent Green. Join us each and every week.